first thing I want to ask you is, with those moves so far and maybe what hasn't happened yet and the rumors that have been coming out, has anything really surprised you early on with the Mets this offseason?
Yeah, everything they've done pretty much has been surprising. I can't believe Braden Nimmo is gone, both from the perspective of that they were able to unload his contract and the fact that David Stearns had the uh, testicular fortitude to make that deal. That's not to say I don't like the deal. From everything I've read about and seen about Marcus Semien, he seems like a really stand-up dude, and there's room for him to have a bounce back offensively, and he is a good for the run prevention. So, but no, that was surprising, and the Devin Williams deal was also surprising to me because Devin was apparently he had 5 suitors and they all needed closers, and he signed not only a week before the winter meetings, but he does it where he doesn't know if he's going to close or not, and apparently he's okay with that. So that was surprising to me.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that he was actually able to get a 3-year deal and not have to take like a Helsley prove it type thing. I guess more people just looked at it as like, hey, last year we feel like was more of a blip where Helsley's was trending to, missing bats less. And, obviously there's a lot of underlying stats that look pretty favorably upon Williams versus like Helsley was just like a very different situation. A lot of the underlying numbers are like, hey, he throws 101, but like he's missing bats less and less every year with that pitch. And then obviously what happened in New York, he really just blew up where, Devin Williams has one of the larger ERA FIP discrepancies I've seen in a while. And that doesn't always mean everything. Sometimes that lies, but it's definitely interesting. He's still striking out a ton of dudes, did finish the season strong. I don't think Yankee fans are upset that he's gone. And Devin Williams made some comments about that on his Instagram story the other night, which was pretty funny. But I was a little bit surprised, not that they signed him, but that he did get a 3-year contract with no opt-outs. Definitely interesting there. And I think I like it as long as he's the setup guy. Sure. This is both of these moves, and Andrew and I talked about it the other day on our live stream reacting to the move, was both like the Nimmo and the Williams moves are like, okay, I like it in principle, but it really depends on what they do after this. For both of those moves, like what are they going to do in the outfield post Nimmo? How are they going to make up for the offense that they're giving up there? And then same with Devin Williams is Edwin Diaz coming back, and then all of a sudden you have a really nice 1-2 punch in those final 2 innings, which is what they tried to do at the trade deadline. It just didn't work. Is this their second attempt at that, or is this more of like the insurance policy in case Edwin Diaz leaves? And if that's the case, then people are going to look on it a lot differently, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you had to give a grade so far for the Mets offseason, it's an incomplete because we have to see the full puzzle before we harshly judge David Stearns and Steve Cohen. So,
yeah. Do you, on that subject, this has been kind of a theme a lot early this offseason, and we try not to react too much to the noise on Twitter, but it's hard not to sometimes, where it seems like a lot of people don't trust David Stearns now. Some people might have, the Joe Beningos of the world never liked him, and that's a different situation. But I think a lot of people, rightly so, after what happened this year, where he made a bunch of moves that seemed questionable at the time and mostly didn't work. I think people are a little bit more hesitant with him, and maybe are not so willing to trust the vision this early in the offseason until they see what comes next. How are you feeling about it? Like, do you trust him? Do you trust the process, or is it really like a big wait and see for you?
As much of a cliche as trust the process is, I guess I do trust the process because, it seems like from what we know, that 2024 was supposed to be a bridge year, and then what happened was the Mets had this magical OMG run, and then
Mm-hmm.
Stearns couldn't, even if he wanted to, he couldn't trade the core or part of the core or the Fab Four or whatever you want to call it. And then he built off of that, with Juan Soto, and then it turned out that maybe he should have. So it seems like he just is. It's delayed a year or two what his plan was,
Mm-hmm.
and like the 24 might have been, now that he knows, or at least he thinks he knows, 24 was an outlier. He could go about his plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of, and I think you brought this up on Twitter. By the way, I love that we call it Twitter, not X, because
Yeah, never ever calling it that
never.
stupid name.
That's why you have to watch the video, folks, because of what I just did. The sound effects are not. What were we talking about? Right,
Twitter.
Yes. You tweeted that we shouldn't judge Stearns based on what he did in Milwaukee. Like we don't know what he's going to do. And I've seen people point out like, oh, he's not going to give Edwin Diaz 5 years. Yeah, but he did have Josh Hader and Devin Williams as a 1-2 punch for years.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be the Devin Williams side. It might be, so you could turn that around. So yeah, to answer your question, I do trust him. I don't, as much as I could trust any one human being. I don't think he's a deity. I don't think, I don't.
He's not
I wouldn't trust him.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't trust him in my life or whatever. But no, just saying. But apparently, sometimes when you defend David Stearns, it's like, you like the smart Harvard boys or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it is funny that like simply being educated is now like offensive to people. We don't have to get into that. That's more of a that's more of the state of the world right now. But I actually
anti-intellectualism.
I do think you bring up an interesting point though that I don't think I've thought of too much. Is that were the Mets and David Stearns in particular are almost like victims of their own success in 2024. I don't know if you follow football too much, but it almost reminds me of the New York Giants from a few years ago where, and I don't want to make this like a total 1-to-1 comparison because I think Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen were actually bad at their jobs. And I don't think David Stearns is bad at his job, at least at this stage of this thing. Same with Carlos Mendoza. But, they had come in 2022 as the new like head coach and GM combo with the Giants. That was supposed to be a total rebuild. They get off to this crazy hot start. They're like 7-2 or something. They wind up finishing with 9 wins. They get into the playoffs very unexpectedly, and they actually win a road playoff game. Daniel Jones, he only throws like 15 touchdowns that season, but he lit up the Vikings in the playoffs. They lose in the next round the Eagles, but that completely changed the calculus of what the Giants were going to do because they hadn't even picked up Daniel Jones's 5th-year option. They were going to let him leave. After that, they wound up having to re-sign him to a big deal. They choose him over Barkley. They wind up getting rid of both of them eventually because it just doesn't work out. And now they're in this mess where they're, you could argue they're worse than the Jets. And that first year success might have actually screwed them over and messed with their original plan. Would it have worked out? Probably not, because they just were not very good. But I think that is a kind of similar situation that you bring up, is that, maybe coming off 2023, which was a big disappointment year where the Mets hard pivoted in July and said, like, this isn't working. We're getting rid of all the veterans. We're getting rid of the manager. And then we're finally getting the big baseball exec that we wanted to, and eventually moved on from Billy Epler. That was a pretty hard reset for that team. And to your point, like 2024 maybe really wasn't supposed to be what it was. And because of that, you might have to act differently. And is David Stearns really just getting into his actual plan now?